All right. Good morning, everyone. All right, we're recording now.
Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Supreme Dow is joining us for a candidate interview. We're interviewing candidates for the PA House of Representatives, District 198 seat. So our first candidate today is Mr. Supreme Dow. He's going to be interviewed by my students at Central High School in my social science class. So I'm going to jump back over to the Google Meet here. And my students, I'm going to turn it right over to my students to start asking you some questions. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Dow.
You're welcome. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. And Mr. Quinn, thank you for actually providing this venue for students to participate in a civic action.
Sure. All right, Kavan, I think you're starting us off.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Dow.
Good morning.
All right, to start things off, can you please tell us a little bit about your background with education and experience?
In education?
Yeah.
Well, I've been was born and raised and I went to all public schools in my life. All of my sisters and brothers were raised in the public school system. I went to public schools in Northwest Philadelphia. I started off at the Fittler Elementary School and then went into the John B. Kelly School, which is on Pulaski Avenue inside of the 198th District. When I was the first class to go into John B. Kelly when it was first built. And then I went from John B. Kelly to C.W. Henry School, and then I went to Martin Luther King High. So I'm a product of the public education system, but more importantly, I'm a product of two parents that stressed education, that my mother stressed educating ourselves and being civically active, and my father stressed the stressed education regarding speaking in standard English and having a firm advocacy for academics. So I was raised in a family where I was civically and academically challenged all the time, challenged by our parents, that is. So I was raised understanding the value of education. And because I was always active in community work all of our lives, because of the interaction of my mother with her community, with our community, I understood also the value that public education has on children. So as an adult, what I did was I went back and volunteered at the John B. Kelly Elementary School. And I volunteered there for so long that they decided to hire me, and I call it they gave me what I called volunteer pay. I remember it was at the time, I worked about 4 hours a day and was paid about $8 an hour. So I was making about $32 an hour. I think that I used that for gas to put in my car. It was a really wonderful experience because I had an opportunity to work personally engaging students in reading and math, and also helping to establish a African American male presence in the school and in the lives of a lot of the children. I knew a lot of the instructors there and the principal because I was born, raised, and lived most of my adult life in Germantown. So I had a distinct connection to our community. And then I went on to, after volunteering there, I met my wife. She was a science teacher there, and she's still my wife. She's the teacher at Rhodes Elementary School, and she teaches writing. So I went from there, and my children, one of my sons went to C.E. Pickett Middle School before it was a charter school at the time. Before it was had a management company run the school. It was still a full-fledged public school, and I became the president of the Home and School Association, because any school that my children were involved in and went to, I made sure that I was an active parent. I also had a daughter who went to John Story Jenks, and I was the Home and School president at Jenks, which is in Chestnut Hill as well. And also have a background in organizing parents for education reform. So I'm a community organizer by trade, and so working in the field of public education and understanding the value of public education, I think that every school deserves to have full functioning and resourced home and school associations, and the school plays a vital role in the child, in the growth and development of each child and each student. So I think there should be a triangular, or if not a holistic perspective, when we look at our children and have a distinct relationship between the home, school, and the community. And also in public education, I will say I'm the founder and executive director of the Black Writers Museum, which is the only museum of its kind in the nation. It's an institution that provides exhibits of classic and contemporary Black literature, and uses these exhibits to celebrate the impact that Black literature has had on the development of American culture, and also to stress and teach literary skills to youth. So we have universities from all over the country visit. We have students from all over the region visit, and to do research. And I founded this institution with my own life savings. I had the bright idea, came home one day and told my wife, I'm going to quit my consulting job and I'm going to work as, I'm going to build an institution, because institutions are the backbone of communities. And in order to have thriving communities, you must have really, really good, solid, and firm institutions. So that's been running for the last 10 years now, since 2010. And I started with my own collection. And when I had my grand opening, people began to come in and see the value of what we had to offer there. And since then, we started with a small collection of mine, of Black books like Invisible Man, of Ralph Ellison, James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, Arna Bontemps. And then people started to contribute, and now we have over 10,000 items. And we have periodicals and newspapers and journals from as early as the 1700s.
Okay, thank you. My next question, can you please describe the responsibilities and powers of the PA House of Representatives and why you're running for such a position?
Sure. The responsibilities and powers of, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, good. The responsibilities of the General Assembly and the Pennsylvania House of Representatives is to actually make laws that govern the state. And you have a House of Representatives, with about a couple hundred representatives, and you have a Senate, and then you have the governor, and then you have some row offices, what we call row offices, in there. And all of the bills and the laws that are produced in the House of Representatives or the Senate, but they have to go through each house and then pass from each house and go to the governor's office, and then the governor signs it or doesn't sign it or vetoes it. Either or. And if they're vetoed, they get sent back, and then you have to rework the bill, and something that's amenable for the government to sign, or you have a veto proof where you get a certain amount of representatives that actually support the bill, and that's what you call a veto proof bill that cannot be vetoed. I think it's over 2/3 of the assembly. So and in that, one of the reasons why I'm running is because each representative represents a district, which is a portion of demographics and a location in the state of Pennsylvania. And it is my view that the 198th district has been severely underrepresented for the last 25 years. I've lived in this district. I've lived in Germantown all of my life. Certain points when I was younger, I moved out, but Germantown is my home. I was born in Germantown. So I have a distinct and comprehensive understanding of what goes on. I've always been civically active. I built the Black Writers Museum in Vernon Park, which is a beautiful green space right off of Germantown and Shelton, in a historic property that was built in the 1700s. And in doing that, I got the opportunity to see how the impact that building relationships can have on providing for your community. In order to build that museum, a lot of folks said, well, you built that museum on your own, and I actually didn't. We don't do anything on our own. We are all interdependent. And so I started to establish relationships with our elected officials, with community members, key community stakeholders, companies and corporations to bring resources to bear on this particular institution. And my view is we can get that same type of leadership that I've shown in developing the Black Writers Museum to bring resources to bear on the 198th District. The school that I went to, John B. Kelly Elementary School, and the school that I volunteered for, and the school that I helped students with reading and math, has a library that does not function, has a non-operational library. And what they do is they have a group of volunteers that come in and actually do what they can to put on and show students the value and show them how to do research and show them how to utilize a library. That's totally unacceptable. Doing a library, as far every school in Philadelphia, every school in the state of Pennsylvania, every school in this nation should have a functioning library with a qualified, certified librarian. And so there are things like this that have been allowed to fester. There are buildings, facilities, school facilities that are just have open air hazardous materials with asbestos in the air. I don't see why there's not someone running around with their hair on fire or acting like their hair is on fire, making a big thing about this. I didn't go to school where we had open air asbestos or open air hazardous materials. I went to schools where we had actually fully stocked libraries. And with universities inside of Philadelphia proper, there's no reason why in the world, until we get the funds to actually open up our own libraries, that we can't partner with these institutions, because institutions that function in Philadelphia have to be held accountable and have to be made to recognize that this is a holistic approach in educating our children. So the reason why I'm running is I know that I can bring the leadership necessary and the advocacy and the passion and drive and the experience to put the 198th district in a position to be a thriving community, a community that I remember was thriving.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions. Did I lose you again?
No, you didn't lose us. Justin, you ready?
Yep. All right. Good morning, Mr. Dow.
Good morning.
My first question is, what can you do to ensure that as a city and state we are ready for round 2 of COVID-19 or any other illness/disaster with similar closures like we're currently facing?
Can you read the second part of that question a little fast? Can you say that again?
Yeah. All right. I'll read it again. What can you do to ensure that as a city and state we are ready for round 2 of COVID-19 or any other illness/disaster with similar closures like we are currently facing?
Okay. A few things. Number one, I think in the state of Pennsylvania, and particularly in Philadelphia, because it's a Philadelphia like Pittsburgh, because they're really dense urban areas, we need to do some massive testing at this particular point in time. There needs to be massive testing, number one. I think all of our communities need to take the protocols of washing your hands, of wearing gloves, of wearing masks very, very seriously, and keeping your space between one another, at least 6 feet in space. And we need to take that seriously. And then there needs to be massive testing. And then where we can identify the actual folks and the people and residents and who have the symptoms and actually who have COVID-19, there needs to be some really comprehensive contact tracing, so we can figure out, get a handle on where the virus is, and so we can contain it. We also need to really get a big grip, for lack of a better term, on our elder care facilities, because a lot of the deaths are coming from our retirement homes and our senior centers. And part of my platform, of course, one of my major issues is public education, but another one is also taking care of our elderly, because they're the most vulnerable in our communities, and they have the most to offer our communities in their eldership. So we have to make sure that our facilities are run appropriately and have quality quality care. So we identifying the virus, folks with the virus. So it's massive and consistent testing, comprehensive contact tracing, and to go into our senior centers and elderly homes, and to make sure that we all of the staff are following protocol. They're not leaving their facility, going home and just going out acting wild without following the protocol themselves, and then bringing the virus back into the home. I mean, back into the senior home or the nursing home. And those three things I think are key. And then also to prepare our institutions, such as our schools, to have classes online. My wife is a teacher; she's online downstairs right now with her students, and to make sure that all of our students are prepared, have the internet, are prepared to attend school every day for whatever period of time it's designated, and to make sure that we can learn virtually. Because I don't think the scientists have said that it's liable to come back more forceful and fierce than the first wave. So we have to be prepared for it.
All right, thank you. And my next question is, PA taxpayers pay $18 million a year for the Keystone exams that high school students have to take. What is your stance on standardized tests? Do you feel like these tests provide a racial disadvantage or advantage? And do you believe they are necessary?
Well, I'll say this: there has to be a module to get a module of a methodology in finding out what students know and where they need help. Standardized tests in the state of Pennsylvania and the United States empirically has proven to be not culturally competent, and are not actually effective in providing the results that we need. There are a lot of students. I have a daughter who's one who actually she doesn't test well. She didn't when she was in school, but she's high functioning now, of course. But so I think they are culturally biased. The data backs that up and suggests that as well. And so I think it puts particularly African American children at a disadvantage. So at this particular point in time, I'm not in favor of standardized testing, not the way it is produced and implemented in the Philadelphia public school system and in the state of Pennsylvania. So we have to work on that aggressively, and we have to find out a better way to get to acquire information regarding how our students obtain and acquire and retain the information and academic skills to make them globally competitive.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your time, Mr. Dow.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Nicole, and I'm going to ask, how important is student safety in the communities they go to school in, and how would you go about making communities safer for students who perhaps walk or bike to school?
Well, I think our schools are the hubs of our communities. They always have been. Our students and we send our children off to school every day, and they spend more time in school than they do in any particular situation in their life. And so our schools have to be safe spaces. I remember when I was volunteering at John B. Kelly School, we started a safe corridor. But also what happens in school, because of the undereducation, because of our schools are not equitably funded, particularly in Philadelphia, and because we have a fatally flawed funding formula, all of our children don't experience and don't have access to the resources that other students in suburban Pennsylvania, suburban Philadelphia, and suburban areas across the state enjoy. So what happens is when you have schools that are struggling because of a lack of resources, because of 30 students in the class, because of teachers who are underpaid, because of teachers who have to come out of their own pocket to buy resources for students, because of schools that don't have libraries, what you're doing is you're raising children who are not properly academically equipped or really socially equipped, because a lot of our social experience come from school. most of the relationships that I have now that are really strong, firm relationships are relationships that I developed in school. So schools are the backbone of our communities, one of the most important, if not the most important institution in our communities. So once the schools thrive, the communities thrive. So I think now from that, we go into children not being academically prepared to enter the market, the global market, to enter college or to enter a vocational school or to actually compete in the global market. So therefore, we have communities that suffer, and where you have poverty and you have undereducation, crime is on the forefront. So we have those things that are all wrapped in many urban communities across America. So therefore, at times it's unsafe for our children to go to and from schools. I walked to school when I lived on when I went to C.W. Henry, and it was about a mile. I lived on Upshur Street, and C.W. Henry was at Carpenter Lane and Green. And I really had a good time. I couldn't wait to walk to school the next morning with my friends. That was an activity for us on our way to school. When I didn't have the bells, 'cause I used to play the bells, the xylophone in school, and they were really heavy. So we have to make sure that, number one, our schools are fairly equitably funded and have all the resources to raise our children academically, so they can matriculate into high school, into good universities, into vocational trainings, or even into the job market, and so we can reduce and eventually eliminate poverty, because the root of a lot of the crime and violence in urban communities is because of poverty and undereducation. Now, with that being said, immediately what we can do is begin to reestablish the school community relationship. One of the things that the Philadelphia School District has done is actually backed out of school community relationships. I don't particularly agree with our Dr. Height, our president superintendent, and his quest to shut down public schools and to actually withdraw funding. Because my wife works at Rhodes School, and that's been a turnaround school, quote unquote turnaround. They changed the name of it, but meaning that they're supposed to access more resources for these students, and the school hasn't been turned around as of yet. And we have a good set of teachers that need to be paid more. When I see a teacher, I thank a teacher for their service, and all of our teachers in Philadelphia school system and all of our school district employees need to be thanked. So we have to develop safe corridors to and from our schools, and we have to reestablish the school community relationships. So our businesses in our schools, so our elders and adults businesses in our communities, and our elders and our adults in our communities actually feel the duty and the responsibility of their school and of their school community. And I think that will go a long way in increasing the safety for our students. And we can get men. We have a lot of men's groups and a lot of other groups that have developed safe corridors. There's a group of men that were working at Roosevelt Middle School. I don't know if it's still a middle school or not now, but Men Who Care of Germantown. And they went into the school. We had a church that actually adopted Roosevelt so they can create a safe space, because school for me has always been a safe space. And I think we need to continue that.
Okay, you answered part of this, but what will you do to provide more resources for students' mental health?
I'm sorry, I didn't even hear that part. Well, our schools, I did speak about the underfunding of schools, and because our schools are underfunded, we lack certain things. Like when I was coming up, schools had counselors and schools had access to quality and qualified counselors. So mental health is a major issue in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania public schools because of the of our environment, because of our community, because of the violence in our community, and because of the trauma that a lot of our students are faced with, either at home or in their particular community. So we need to have qualified resources in our schools. And what we can do to that is you can build the relationships with a network of elected officials, with a network with the city, state, and federal institutions and elected officials to bring the resources home, to bring the resources into our schools. Um, I, I, Children and students are the one common thing that everybody in the world has. Everybody wants to take care of their children. So I don't see why I call it a lack of political will and a lack of leadership that we can't find and make sure that our schools are properly funded and have the resources that they need. So we can start to establish like groups of leadership teams, or in the House they call them caucuses, that would develop um, some protocol for how you deal with the social and personal pressures of our students dealing with emotional issues. They used to have emotional support, and I'm sure they still do have emotional support in school, but I'm not sure how effective that is because of the lack of resources. So we have to, through leadership, we have to build the relationships to bring the resources to bear on our particular schools through having certified and qualified counselors, and then having relationships outside of the school, but that work with the school that can provide even more intense services for our students.
Good morning, Mr. Dow. I'm Josiah, and my question is, what will you do to make sure Pennsylvania schools are fairly funded so Philly students can get an education equal to students living in wealthy suburbs?
Good morning, Josiah. Thank you for the question. One of the things is about I think that the the issue of the inequitable funding for schools in Philadelphia and across the state is an issue I think that can be addressed, and I think it should be the civil rights of this decade, the civil rights issue of this decade. There are some other elected officials, other state representatives and senators that agree with me. And as I mentioned in answering the last question, I think that all of I don't think you can approach a parent and ask a parent if the child is the number one issue and their number one concern. Their child is the number one issue and concern in their life, because our children are our number one concern and are our number one resource, because our communities await them, and we're grooming them and we're raising them to take over and to take on the mantle of leadership for our communities. So we have to. So it's an issue of political will. It's as simple as that. There is a major conservative force coming across this nation that has been thriving in this nation to dismantle public education. And we can fight that, and we should. However, what we need a comprehensive effort from the community. If we don't have the a elaborate and engaged electorate, this cannot happen. I came up in an era where the communities were very, very active. And so we enforced our will on our elected officials. So they had to carry our water, which means that the issues that were important to us had to be important to them because we elected them. So when you elect an elected official, I can give you a lot of answers, but if you don't hold me to these answers, then they mean nothing, Josiah. So we have to communities have to become organized. I watched years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, in the 90s, late 90s, when the Tea Party started organizing parents and organizing communities, and then they took over. They established a Tea Party caucus in the Congress of the United States, and started to move this country away from some of the progressive ideals that this country was founded upon, like the sanctity of public education and the constitutional right for public education, and the right for our schools to be fairly funded. So it's an issue of political will and leadership, and it's also an issue of getting a energized and organized and educated electorate to enforce our issues upon our elected officials. Now, with me, you have someone that's going up there. I grew up in the public education system. I understand the value of public education, and I'm not for privatization at all. So you have someone that's going to fight for that and is passionate about it. But we need to establish a relationship and a wave across this country, similar to the wave that that the conservative group of America has, and in their quest to defund and underfund public schools. So establishing those getting that money is just a matter of an elaborate and effective electorate with elected officials that remain accountable to the people.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Kevon, what's a fun fact about you?
Pardon me?
What's a fun fact about you?
Thank you for the question, and good morning, Kevon. A fun fact, that's a good one. That's the hardest question out there. You got me all serious. Now I got to think of a fun fact. A fun fact about me is that I am really, I'm a thinker. I think a lot, and people regard as I stay in my head. However, I am a really big jokester. I love to joke and have fun. I'm like my father. My father was like that. And so the fun fact about me is I love to have fun. And I think that we can all work and have fun at the same time. I think that we can learn while we're having fun. So I joke. I'm not necessarily a prankster, but I love to laugh, and I love to enjoy myself. And so I think that would be the fun fact about me is that I love to have fun. Not at any expense, but almost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Got one last question there. Kevon, you ready?
Yes. Lastly, why is it important for young people to vote?
It's extremely important for all the reasons that I just talked about. Because our community awaits you. Our community awaits your leadership. And so we all have responsibilities. And I used to tell, I've run youth groups at some point in my adult life, either written curriculum for rites of passage programs. I started at the C.E. Pickett Middle School when I was a homeschool president. I started a brother-to-brother rap session, which was a group where we got young brothers, an after-school program where we helped them with their homework and also talk to them about their experiences. So if we're not civically engaged, then what happens is we're not prepared to take the mantle of leadership for our communities. We don't understand the value of electing our government officials. Then what happens is we become a victim of them. Similar to the situation right now, I think what we have with this COVID-19 is a case of failed leadership within our president of the United States. We just had the president of the United States on TV just state that he was taking some drug that was proven not to be effective for the novel coronavirus. So we have a failed leadership, and we're victims of that because of I also think it's because our election was tampered with, but we can't allow this to happen. So you have to prepare yourself. Also, we have a large part of our electorate that do not vote. We have an average of about 20 to 25% of the people vote. So they say, well, that's why we don't get the resource that we need. But really, that's saying that 75 to 80% of the people are saying something that they don't trust, and they don't think that our government is working on their behalf. And I say, if you want your government to work on your behalf, you should vote as an individual, but you also should organize, not just encourage, but organize and mobilize folks to vote so your vote can be heard. So, and that's how your vote is heard, because then you elect the folks, you elect the people who reflect your ideals and reflect your positions. And if you don't, well, then you're a victim of that. And we can't allow that to happen. We can't allow our communities to be overrun with violence, with crime, with undereducation, with miseducation, with business districts that are trashed. And the only thing you can buy at your neighborhood store is a pair of sneakers. We need thriving communities. If you go to have arts and cultural institutions in them, because these are things that build our youth. These are the things that build our communities and have to be available to our young folks. So when you're walking at Germantown and Shelton, you can go right into Vernon Park, and right in the middle of that park is a beautiful historic property, and you can knock on the door and you can walk into the Black Writers Museum free of charge. And you can go around and learn about the impact of Black literature on American culture. You can read a newspaper, the New York Times from the 1800s, or The Liberator by William Lloyd Garrison, who was a friend of Frederick Douglass, and who was an abolitionist. And so when we arm ourselves with the only way to arm ourselves with this is to become actively engaged. And in order for us to get some of the answers to our questions in practicality, in real life, we have to make sure that we're politically active. So when these folks go to Harrisburg, they go to City Hall, they go to the council, they go to the General Assembly, they go to the Senate, they go to the House, wherever they go, they have to answer to us, Devon. And so that's why it's the utmost importance to participate in electoral politics.
Mr. Dow, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us this morning and talking to our students, coming into public school and talking to our students. That's really, really important for our elected officials and candidates to do that. So I just very briefly, my students have to run off to their next class, at least online. Do you want to say any brief last words?
Yes, I wanted to thank all of the students for coming up with those really good questions. And to encourage them to continue on their educational endeavor, wherever that might lead them, and to recognize that at this particular point in time, you and others, Mr. Quinn, you and others are preparing them to take the mantle of leadership. And with those questions, those well thought out questions, I expect our communities to be left in some good hands. So thank you.
Thank you too, and good luck in your campaign.
Thank you very much.
All right, so just wrapping up here, we just heard from Mr. Supreme Dow, candidate for PA Legislature District 198 in the 2020 PA primary coming up on June 2nd. Make sure you have applied for a mail-in ballot. It's really important this time around because 77% of Philadelphia polling places are going to be closed and consolidated. There's going to be long lines and crowds. So if you can apply by mail, to vote by mail, do so in the next day or two because the deadline is coming up. If you're interested in getting your peers to register to vote, start a voter registration club at your school. Contact Philly Youth Vote, Vote That John, When We All Vote. Thanks for your questions, students. And I just wanted to let you know that the School District of Philadelphia is now broadcasting our candidate interviews on their PSTV education channel. So you can look on cable TV, cable access to see those. I don't know. All right. So have a great day, everyone.
Have a good day, Mr. Quinn.
You too. Take care.
All right. Have a good day, Mr. Quinn.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.